welcome to our first community meeting of the year. Happy New Year. We're still in January, so I think it's still appropriate. Hopefully everyone had great holidays. So we're excited to host our first meeting, and it's a very nice turnout, so our Kevins should be very happy with that. My name is Maria Mark. I'm the president of Beaches Watch. I'm also your host for tonight. So we'll get started. Let's see. So, our Beaches Watchers meetings are always recorded, so you can always watch it on our YouTube channel the next day, or you can tell your friends and neighbors about it if they missed it. So it's on our Beaches Watch channel 2012. We are always encouraging new members and our former members to rejoin. So our membership is $15 for individuals, $20 for family, and $5 for students. It's valid from January through December. So you can renew your membership or join tonight. Our lovely Eileen and Joyce are sitting at the table as you walked in. They'll be glad to take your money and donations. Or you can go online to our beacheswatch.com. I'd like to go ahead and recognize our elected officials. So we have Commissioner Candace Kelly from Atlantic Beach. We have Greg Sutton from the City of Jacksonville Beach. We have Sandy Golding, City of Jacksonville Beach. And we do have some former elected officials I would like to recognize. Bill Gulliford probably does not need any recognition. He has been mayor, commissioner, city council, everything and anything, and just a wonderful ally for our beaches. And we have Janelle Wilson, who is a former City of Jacksonville Beach City Council. Did I miss anyone? All right, I see fingers pointing.
Harriet.
Oh, Harriet. Oh, how could I miss Harriet? Harriet, former mayor of Neptune Beach. Yes, nice to see you, Harriet. Anyone else? Anyone else who would like to be recognized? Okay. So just a couple of announcements here before we get on the presentation for tonight. Looks like Atlantic Beach is pretty busy. We've got a town hall meeting coming up on Saturday. It's coming Saturday at 10 a.m. I'm not sure where that's going to be. Candace? Can you tell?
I'm out of town, so I don't know.
Yeah, oh, okay, sorry to put you on the spot. We can check the City of Atlantic Beach's website. It will have all the information there. We also have our City Commission will be doing their priority setting for this coming year. Looks like the first meeting will be held on Monday, January 30th at 5:30, and that will be in the chambers at City Hall. Jacksonville Beach City Council and the CRA joint meeting will be Monday, January 30th at 5:30. So I guess they'll be talking about the CRA, downtown development, and that sort of thing. So any of our Jacksonville Beach residents, would highly encourage you to participate, join that, so you can give them your input. Our upcoming February meeting is February 1st at 7 p.m. That's going to be the State of the Beaches report. And that's when we have all three of our mayors coming in to give us updates about what's been going on and what the future holds. So that's always a well-attended meeting. I would suggest you get here early to make sure you get a seat. So we'll have Neptune Beach Mayor Elaine Brown, Atlantic Beach Mayor Curtis Ford, his debut, and Jacksonville Beach Mayor Chris Hoffman, and that will be here at the library. So, any other announcements? Birthdays? Celebrations? Okay. So we will go ahead and start with our presentation. We will have, first speaking will be Kevin Bodge. He is a consultant at Olsen Associates, followed by Kevin Brown, who probably needs no introduction either. But he is a retired Fletcher High School marine science teacher. He started the Marine Biology Club. He's a former member of Beaches Watch, and we're trying to get him to join the board again. So I'm putting you under the bus there, Kevin. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and Kevin Bodge, come up. I hope you can do this.
Don't go too far. We'll see if it's going to work. Okay. Yeah, thanks for coming up today. Again, I'm Kevin Bodge. I'm the president of Olsen Associates. Incorporated here in Jacksonville, we're a coastal engineering firm, small firm here, and we do work on beach erosion issues and oceanfront development throughout the southeast United States and all around the Caribbean and I consult across the world quite a bit. I've been the coastal engineering consultant with the city of Jacksonville since, I guess the mid-90s, and my role is to basically assist the city of Jacksonville, who is the non-federal sponsor of our beach nourishment or shore protection project, in managing that project and basically working to grease the wheels between the Corps of Engineers, the state of Florida, the city of Jacksonville, and the beach communities in order to make sure that our beaches remain nourished and healthy. And what I want to talk about, of course, specifically today is the state of our dunes after our most recent episode, which is Hurricanes Ian and Nicole, back-to-back within about 5 weeks this past fall. The photograph you see there, of course, is on a good day at the beach. And I thought I wasn't going to do a presentation at first, but I started thinking, you know, it's kind of fun to kind of bring in a visual perspective, some of the stuff that we see as consulting engineers in analyzing what's going on at the beaches and how to repair them. And to start that off, although it was just a few months ago, it's good to kind of remember what these two storms were about. Coastal engineers look at all aspects of storm events as they occur. And one of the most useful things we look at is the wind field. It's the wind field and the duration that really drives the storm surges and the waves that impact the beach. This is the wind field of Hurricane Ian in late September as it approached from the south up through the Keys, across Florida. Those white lines are the streaming wind velocities. And you see they're pretty much onshore early on, and then they certainly coming from the north as the storm moves on the Georgia coastline. Hurricane Nicole, around November 10th, approached, of course, from the east. And you see that big stream of wind coming in from the northeast continually for about 4 or 5 days. Hurricane Nicole to us was really more of a long, strong nor'easter event than it was a hurricane. Onshore winds as the storm crossed over into the Gulf, and then briefly crossing so that they came from the south as the storm exited up into Georgia. So after a storm, we do, within usually 48 hours after its passage, a complete visual examination of the beach and the dune system across the entire 9-mile length of the project from the poles down to the county line. We should do that by walking with a bicycle, taking photographic documentation, and also taking measurements to document the approximate amount of erosion that we see on both the beach and the dune. Throughout this, I'll talk about the berm and the dune. The berm, for purposes of this discussion, is the kind of flat part of the beach which slopes down into the ocean, which is where you hang out, put your towel, and recreate. The dune is everything landward of that, the steeper vegetated area behind it. It's important in Duval because there's a distinction between the two. The federal government is responsible for maintenance of the berm, the flat part going into the ocean, and the city of Jacksonville is responsible for maintenance of the dune element, which is behind it. Subsequent to those visual observations and reports we make, we immediately order a set of beach profile surveys. They're reconnaissance level surveys we take about every 2,000 feet along shore to establish monuments. This is a good example here on the screen of what we see, of what we saw around Lemon Street in North Neptune Beach. And it's representative because one thing we found from our observations after both Ian and Nicole was the level of damage from both of these storms to the beach and the dune was very, very uniform everywhere. Ham Park was a different, talk about that in a second. And one of the reasons for that is because we had rebuilt the entire dune in a very uniform way, to a relatively uniform height, to a relatively uniform setback from the designed shoreline after the most recent 2019 renourishment, which was completed after Hurricane Irma. One reason that you see the visual impact of the dunes being so great after Ian and Nicole, probably visually the greatest that any living person has seen, was because the dunes were basically in their healthiest shape since probably over the last 100 plus years. And that is the result of the post repairs that we've done after Matthew, and particularly after Hurricane Irma. We developed a very robust, continuous dune system along the whole area, and so the storms hit everything fairly uniformly. Before I forget, Hannah Park a little different. Erosion damage along Hannah Park really not so great. In fact, the middle part of it saw very little dune erosion, and the beach actually even elevated in elevation part of that area. Within about 1,500 feet of the poles, different story, there was a beach erosion and dune erosion in that area. Why is that? One, we haven't rebuilt the dunes along the Hannah Park area so much, just vegetated them. But also, our shoreline's not straight. It's actually a very weakly curved embayment. And the apex of that curve is around central North Atlantic Beach, say around 15th Street, more or less. So north of that, the shoreline is actually inclining a little bit toward the northeast, and south of that, it's actually inclining slightly toward the southeast. And so we see a little difference in behavior along that cove area of Hannah Park, where the nearshore seabed is also very, very shallow and very gentle compared to the rest of the beach. So we see a difference in the performance along it. But nonetheless, along most of the shoreline from North Atlantic Beach through down to the county line, we see a beach profile that looks like this. This is very exaggerated, about an 8-to-1 vertical exaggeration. So I made the dunes very tall and the beach very narrow relative to reality, just to fit on the screen. The green curve that you see there is the beach and dune profile in May 2022, about 5 months prior to the storm impacts of Ian. The dashed lines you see here this is the authorized design of the Federal Shore Protection Project, authorized in the 1970s. That is the beach profile coming off the seawall, which is way there over on the left, which Congress authorized the Corps of Engineers to maintain for at least a 50-year period, which runs through 2028. The other dashed line is the current construction template. That's the template to which sand is placed during each renourishment. And of course, we know that sand placed in the template for convenience will slide offshore and then nourish the nearshore area. So this is a very healthy profile in coastal engineering terms in May of 2022, 5 months before the storm. After Hurricane Ian, we saw the beach berm area drop by about 18 inches across the entire platform, down from the toe of the dune out toward mean low water and beyond. Low tide is down here on the far right. And we saw the seaward face of the dune shaved off. Didn't cut into the dune so much, but took off the slopey part, which is on the front of it. Hurricane Nicole, coming 5 weeks later, had a profile impact such as this. Without the protective beach in front of it, the waves slammed right into the dune face, chewing about 20-some feet, actually into the dune, up toward the crest of the dune. In most places, it didn't pass the crest of the dune, but it came pretty much toward the center line of it. Here, not so much because the dunes along the beach are so high. Anyway, the overall net result that we saw was this deflation of the beach berm by a couple of feet, and at the toe of the dune, a recession or cutback along the order of 35 to 40 feet at the toe, and again, some erosion up along the crest of about 15 feet. What does that look like visually at the same location? Well, this is kind of a typical pre-storm location taken actually about a week before Hurricane Ian, just south of the 11th Street beach profile. So 11th Street access is there. Let's put a real visual reference on this. The 11th Street bar is right there. Entrance to the hotel there at 11th Street shown after Ian, so it cut back to the toe of the walkover. But with the protective beach renourishment berm beat up from Ian, so there was no buffer in front of the dune. The waves slammed right into the dune, eroded it back considerably, in this case about 18 feet, from its previous location into the dune walkover. Again, very, very typical response along the entire shoreline from North AB all the way down to the line. I mentioned we do the reconnaissance of the beach, usually about 48 hours after every storm. I've ridden the same stupid beach for the last like 15 years doing these. It's my scale in all of these photographs. So in summary, if we look at this just kind of a typical idealized condition, here is the beach prior to the storm. It's dune and it's berg, kind of idealized. Ian, from the poles all the way down to the county line, eroded about 72,000 cubic yards of sand from the face, that face wedge of the dune. The berg lost about 576,000 cubic yards. Now, for reference, a road dump truck will hold about 18 cubic yards of sand. So that's a lot of dump trucks worth of sand. Nicole then, again, dropped the berm another foot or so and then cut this 15 or 20 feet further back into the dune itself for a loss of 168,000 cubic yards of sand from the dune, the overall dune. And the beach lost only about 20%, as in Ian, about 102,000 cubic yards here. Total impact then was, from the two storms combined, about 240,000 cubic yards from the dune feature and about 678,000 cubic yards from the berm. This value actually is very similar, a little bit less than the impact from Hurricane Matthew in 2016, which was on the order of about 330,000 cubic yards from the overall dune system. And the berm lost, in that case, about 700,000 or 800,000 cubic yards. So these storms were very much on the level of Hurricane Matthew and also Hurricane Irma, which happened to be later in 2017. Not shown here, as well as the loss of dune vegetation across this area. We estimate a loss of about 770,000 dune plants across that planting area. Now, that's a lot, but we had actually planted a lot. After Hurricane Matthew, the city of Jacksonville installed 640,000 COs. And after Hurricane Irma, we planted an additional 340,000 CO plants for a total of almost 1 million plants installed between 2016 and 2017. So a significant amount of those were lost. That's kind of a bummer, but what's amazing, and I think Kevin Brown will talk about this a little bit more, is how well those dune plants did. They were only 3 years old, which is really juvenile in the CO community, and they really held on to things well before giving it up to Mother Ocean. If you look at the dune, I want to go back just a little bit. So we see this measured loss, pre-storms to post-storms, of about 240,000 cubic yards. And the staff engineer I had that was doing these computations came and said, well, the volume to refill our dune construction template, that dashed line I showed you before, it is about 160,000 cubic yards. It's like, well, my first reaction as a senior engineer is, you're wrong. How can you have lost 240,000 cubic yards, but the volume to repair the damage is only like 160? Well, the reason is because the dune had grown so much between 2019, when we did our last renourishment, and prior to Hurricane Ian in the fall of 2022. It had actually grown or accreted by 167,000 cubic yards. So when Ian came and did the first chomp out of the dune, he was actually taking sand that had naturally accreted to the dune toe over the past 3 years, and then Nicole took the rest of that and then bit into the actual sand that we had placed back there in 2019. So a lot of people often say, oh, boy, the dunes are really eroding, they're in bad shape. Like, no, they actually gained about 55,000 cubic yards per year, every year after we rebuilt the project. It's like, wow, that's a bonus. When you look at this closely, here's a zoom in on that dune. So here's the berm part out here. There's that dune construction template I mentioned. Just after the beach was renourished in the spring of 2019, the profile at this location here around 17th Street in Atlantic Beach looks like this blue line. It follows the template because that's what we built, right? By May of 2022, this same profile had actually gained a whole bunch of sand along the crest and widened out by on the order of about 15 feet along its seaward face. Hurricane Ian chopped into that, though, shown here by the paint curve, and then Nicole took another big chop as well. Throw a little wonky science here at you. We like to look at what the overall parameters were of the storms that are impacting the shoreline. So on the top graph here, I apologize, it's small. This is a record of the tides for the 7-day period around Hurricane Ian and about 7 days spanning around Hurricane Nicole. The blue curves are the predicted astronomical tides, just caused by the moon and sun, right? And the red curves are those which were actually measured, the water levels at Mayport, the entrance to Mayport. And you see that the tides were, of course, elevated, as you'd expect, with the reds above the blue here in Ian and Nicole. If you compare the difference between those two, that's the surge, right? And we see this big surge that occurred from both Ian and Nicole, and on the order of about up to about 3.5 feet above the normal predicted tide. For both Ian and Nicole, very similar, and also interestingly, the duration of both was about the same, about 3.2 days of this elevated tide condition for both Ian and Nicole. Before I forget, one reason I mentioned they're about 3.5 feet higher than predicted tide. They're really about 3 feet above normal tide because the predicted tides right now are running about 1/2 foot below reality just because all of the predictions are based on a tidal epoch. That is conditions that are about 25 years old. So we'll see more about that later. What about the wave height? Here are wave height measurements taken from a buoy north of St. Augustine during this period. And again, we see these elevated offshore wave heights. And they're very, very similar for both storms, a little bit longer for Nicole, but both of them running, peaking out similarly at about 20 feet each. Wind speeds also very similar, sustained a little bit longer for Hurricane Ian, but reaching about 40 knots, sustained winds for both Ian and Nicole. And again, we see this sort of long, prolonged nor'easter period activity here with Nicole. In terms of direction, the green area are winds that are coming from the north quadrant. Yellow is straight on shore. And all of these waves, both storms, from Ian in particular, from the north, here for Ian, and then really, really strong high from the north, as you all remember. I mean, it was just like straight along shore for the first few days, and then it reversed for a little bit as that storm went behind us into the Gulf of Mexico and up into past Tallahassee. I won't go into detail here, but basically the conditions for Matthew and Ian were kind of the same, except the surge for Matthew and Ian was bigger, about 4.5 feet for Matthew and up to 6 feet for Hurricane Irma in 2017. But interestingly, the offshore wave heights were about the same, about 20 feet for both of them, surprisingly. Wind speeds also about the same, sustained winds about 40 knots. So Nicole and Ian, although they were considered like minor storms, actually had the same kind of wave heights and wind fields as big monsters Matthew and Irma did before. And wind directions, again, all from the northeast and from both Matthew and Irma. Okay, enough science and wonky stuff there. Let's talk about what we're going to do to repair all of this. Well, the scope of the repair, which is already under planning and scheduling by the Corps of Engineers in the City of Jacksonville, will renourish the entire beach and dune system. The scope of this project will include everything from the poles all the way down to the St. Johns County line. Mayport Naval Station will also receive restoration from both the beach and dune, although it will be from a different source. It will be from maintenance dredging sand from between the jetties. All of the sand for the beaches project, from Hannah Park down through South Jacks Beach, will come from our normal source, which is located on the seabed about 8 miles east of Neptune Beach in about 50 feet of water. That is where basically all of the sand for our multiple projects have come from since 1978, when the project was first constructed. The method of construction and repair will be the same as for all of our prior projects. For those of you who've been around for a while, you know what that means. It's a big hopper dredge, a big ship that goes out 8 miles offshore, sucks the sand up from our offshore bar area, sails very close to shore, hooks up to a pipeline, about a 30-inch steel pipeline, pumps sand out of the beach, discharges, bulldozers, push it up onto the beach, and additionally then shape it up into the dune, and it repeats that process through about 6 or 7 pipelines, which jackleg up the beach, usually from the south to the north, but again, this time going all the way up to, through Hannah Park. After that sand is placed and shaped, which is a project which is managed and run by the Corps of Engineers, the City of Jacksonville will then subsequently follow in with that with a dune vegetation planting project, which we anticipate will plant on the order of 750,000, maybe 800,000 seals, with a mix of some other species thrown in there as well. Schedule-wise, current schedule for actual construction of the project is, I'm going to say right now, in the time frame of early February 2024 through September, October of 2024. The requirement will be to get the project done by the 1st of October of 2024, because we all know you always get nor'easters beginning on October 2nd. Why so long? Why are we doing this now? Well, the main reason is there is no such thing as dial-in dredge, okay? These are really big projects. There are only a few companies in the United States that have the equipment and the capability to build these projects, and they are very expensive, tens and tens of millions of dollars. So it takes a long time to assemble all of the funding sources. We were very fortunate because the Corps of Engineers Jacksonville District had already scheduled a routine renourishment to begin in the summer of 2024. So a lot of the wheels are already starting to turn. But now here's the twist, is because of these storm impacts, the federal government is willing and capable of bringing significantly more funding to the project. So that in sort of the normal cost share of this project, where the Corps of Engineers will put up 61% of the project costs, and the City of Jacksonville will put up the balance, cost share of the state of Florida. We're looking at a scenario where I anticipate the Corps of Engineers will probably be funding on the order of 80 to 85% of the total project costs, inclusive of the vegetation costs. It's kind of a windfall, it's a financial windfall for the local sponsor, which is the City of Jacksonville. But it takes a while to do that. So the paperwork's been filed with Washington to say, hey, we qualify to get all of this additional money for you, the federal government, to come in here and do these post-storm repairs. They're reviewing that now. I think they're going to approve it. Then we'll append it again with Nicole damages, but by the time they actually get that approval and get the money deposited in the Jacksonville Corps of Engineers account downtown, we're talking like, March or April. So we've already lost, a couple of months there. All of the permits are in place for the project, with the permit agent for it, but there's a lot of additional stuff that has to happen. For example, we need a new lease from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. The federal government agency within the Department of Interior, which controls all of the resources on the federal seabed, where our beach nourishment borrow source is located. They control extraction of all of the gravel and minerals and sand, so they have to give us a new lease in order to extract, to dredge out a couple million cubic yards of sand from the seabed that they, the federal government, owns. That process is ongoing, but it takes a while. There's memorandums of agreement that have to be struck between the City of Jacksonville, signed by the mayor and the Corps of Engineers, saying, hey, we'll accept you building this project, and by the way, we're also going to fund you the millions of dollars it takes to rebuild the dunes. because we realize the dunes aren't your problem, it's our problem, but we're going to give you the money to turnkey the repair. And of course, we have to also solicit a contract to do the dune vegetation after. Plans and specifications have to be made, including those that we contribute for the dune repairs. And they have to be reviewed, and the thing has to go out through contract solicitation pursuant to federal acquisition regulations. That is not a one-day event by any means. I've worked on this sort of thing for almost 40 years now, and I'm still trying to understand the process by which the Corps of Engineers solicits a contract. It's been awarded, and then of course the dredger needs time to mobilize stuff. And the dredgers themselves are very, very busy. If you try to fast track a project, it could be that they just say, hey, we've got too much on our plate. We need time in order to schedule this in. And remember that the Jacksonville District Corps of Engineers is doing all of this, not just for Duval, but for 20 other projects scattered around the state. Luckily, we're in like the top 30% of those in the priority list, which is very good. We actually did shave about 3-4 months off of their nominal pre-storm schedule, and we're looking to shave another 2 months off of that, which would have put the project award and notice to proceed right at the end of, or basically middle October of this year. But we all realized there's no point in that. No sane dredger is going to show up in Jacksonville in the middle of October to begin an ocean dredging project, because you're going to get kicked big time. So anyway, in short, I believe that we'll see the construction go down between say, February and October. That's kind of a similar schedule after Irma. It's about 12 to 14 months after Irma for us to get the project built. You'll note also that construction schedule allows us to build the project up through the summertime, green turtle nesting season, which runs from April 15th through mid-October. Duval is unusual in that we have the authorization to build in the summertime. There's a lot of requirements that go with that, including green turtle nest relocation. This project will be particularly complicated because we're going to be occupying the entire beach, so we're going to have to do some thinking on that. But that's just another one of the hurdles we have to get through. As I mentioned, the normal cost share of these projects is about 61.5% from the federal government and balanced by the city of Jacksonville. The beaches cities do not pay any money to the beach nourishment project. It's part of their local agreements. It's all responsibility of the city of Jacksonville. We normally get about a 50-50 cost share with the state of Florida for anything that comes out of the pocket of COJ. In the present instance, we're going to probably keep the dunes underneath the city of Jacksonville umbrella under our responsibility because that repair is eligible for over 75% cost share from FEMA. With the balance of that being cost reimbursed by the state of Florida. So at the end of the day, even though the city of Jacksonville is going to have the fronts between about $6 and $7 million, we'll probably see almost 90% of that reimbursed. So the ultimate net out-of-pocket expense for COJ is quite small. After Hurricane Matthew and Irma, we got over 96% of all of the funds that Bill Gulliford helped appropriate for Matthew and Irma. Over 96% of that $7.5 million was reimbursed to the city of Jacksonville. That's a pretty good ROI. The two other things I mentioned is, real quick, is you've seen, of course, on the news, you saw during Nicole on the Weather Channel and whatnot, the impacts in, say, Flagler County and Volusia County. You know, Daytona Shores, condos, seawalls falling in and everything. And the question was, well, was the storm worse down there? It wasn't. No, the intensity of the storm was, Nicole and Ian, was the same along the whole kind of northeast through central Florida shoreline. The difference is Flagler County and Volusia County don't have a beach management program in place. We weathered it without any interruption of business, without any breaching, without any flooding, because we have had this partnership with the federal government in this complex shore protection project, which was begun in 1978. We, the Florida Shore Beach Preservation Association, the tons of the counties need to get with it. They had seawalls falling in. That's what we saw in 1964. They are 50 years behind the schedule. You know how long it takes to get a new federal project authorized? Minimum 12 years, typically 20 years. So they are a long, long way. St. Johns County is not not far behind. At least they started kicking up their program about 10 years ago. The issue, we are one of the oldest federal shore protection projects in the state of Florida. We're the third oldest behind Miami and Fort Pierce. Our authorization ends in 2028. That's worrisome. However, there was legislation passed on December 23rd of this past year called the Water Resource Development Act. It includes some clever language that we haven't confirmed this yet, but it's my opinion that that language very clearly continues our authorization for another 12 years to the year 2040. Now, I know that there are going to be bureaucrats in Washington who disagree with me, but we got lawyers too. One reason we also have to really make sure that we keep on this project is obviously, as you know, these problems aren't going away. We are faced with a real problem with sea level rise. And so we see these impacts to the projects being worse and worse. We can keep up with it. I mean, there's no question. We have the sand resources, we have the construction and the engineering ability along the coastline in order to keep up with the projected rates of sea level rise. Now, that's not true for the interior waterways. That's a whole other different story of resiliency and how we deal with our interior shorelines, and a topic for another day. But it is very real. The normal long-term rate of sea level rise over the past several centuries has been on the order of about 11 inches per century, let's say 1 foot per century. But over the last 30 years or so, we have seen a measured increase of sea level just in these last 30 years on the order of 8 to 10 inches. Really peaking out from like the mid-1980s up through around 2019. If you project that for a 100-year horizon, which is how we kind of think of these things, that equates to a sea level rise on the order of 2.5 to 3 feet per century, which is, you know, on the order of 3 times greater than what we've seen. It's real, it's measured, and I've seen it in all of my practice over the last 40 years. That's enough science for now. I'll turn it over to the other Kevin. I've got to say, we manage projects all around the state of Florida. We in Duval County are the only ones where our 2 principal players on the local beach and dune scene are both called Kevin B. Kevin leads to a lot of confusion.
Kevin B1, Kevin B2.
Yeah, so how much more can I talk about?
We have plenty.
Yeah, well, he gave you all the science. And when I was teaching, I used a lot of stuff that Kevin had to explain to my students. Now, some of the stuff that I'm going to give you here early, for example, the coastline of Florida is about 700 plus miles of barrier island out of 8,000 miles. Now you go 8,000, those are the little crooks and crannies that go through the coast. So the reason I got so involved in dune protection was it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that when Sanibel and Christie and the Keys and Flagler and Delano get hit, they're not going to look up at Duval. I always felt like Duval was a stepchild. Okay, so that's when I started advocating to students and clubs and big organizations to let's plant some sea oaks in what we call pioneer plants. So that's where that came from. And we started that in 2010. So yes, the city of Jacksonville put out hundreds of thousands, but I can tell you the Marine Science Club put out about 60,000. And we did it in little places. I was telling Harriet earlier, she's like, what are you doing now? And I'm like, okay. What we're doing currently is we're going to the back of the dune. And let me take that. When he talks the toe, this is the toe of the dune. So this is the part that protects us. That's the stuff that's going to take the pounding right there. This is the crest. And then behind it is the back dune. Y'all, our back dunes are about as solid as you can imagine. No water breaches. That's the cool part. Okay? Is from the crest to the back dune is high. It's got a high pitch to it. And in theory, over time, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, you want that to kind of fill in and create this big sand vegetated wall, which is what we did. So that's a tribute to everything we do in Duval County. We just got to keep doing it. We can't let up, because we could, one is you cannot predict when we're going to get another storm. Y'all, we could get hit next spring. Okay, and then if we do that, we're back to point zero. So, the science, understand this, when he was talking about the berm, that's all the beach we lay on and play on and everything. And that's the sand that you don't see, but during the day, that stuff's falling in here constantly. Anytime there's wind, there's all this sand. Now, he gave you some numbers. I'm going to give you something practical. Y'all have seen the PVC pipes. Okay, this is stuff we do. What can we do to protect the dune? Now, where's Sandy? Sandy went out with me the weekend of Orange Crush, wasn't it? Okay, we had not gotten quite to where I wanted to. And we had PVC pipes and rope, and we're putting them in. But that whole weekend, I went down and took pictures. Nobody's in the dune. You can see the big crowd. They're all hanging out. Now, do you have some stragglers? No doubt. But it wasn't 1,500 people. So, what I like to do is be that voice or advocate and say, okay, here's what we're going to do so the dune can build. Now, when we put those PVC pipes up, my students, the guys that were helping me, we have 2 pipes in each block. So we did one about 100 feet in, and we did one going to the next access about 100 feet. We calibrated 2 feet. So wherever we put it in, we made a mark with a marker. Simple science. We calibrated a foot, we made another mark. We calibrated a foot, we made another mark. Before those 2 storms came up, y'all, they were covered. We had gained 2 feet in like 3.5 years, 4 years. So I knew what we were doing was working. Keeping foot traffic off the dune, and I will say this about that. Okay, I know some of y'all get fired up, okay? And that's okay. But I have learned and taught that if you would simply walk up to people and go, can I have a minute of your time? They will say, 9 times out of 10, yeah. Okay, our dunes are, see the sign? Stay off the dune? Yeah, we don't, we don't want that. And they go, oh, I didn't see the sign. I go, okay, that's cool. The access is 2 feet away. Could you use that? So, a lot of times we get visitors, especially in Jack's Beach. Neptune Beach, the Army Corps of Engineers rode along. I got asked twice to take the Army Corps of Engineers out. And because the dunes in Neptune just exploded. For 2 reasons, I think. 3 reasons. 1, we planted like 5,000 COs in that place, supplementally. Okay? Number 2, we got the PVC pipe up at the road. And then we had some good weather. And at the Lemon Bar, I had a student named Rowan Lee, and right there at Hopkins, there was nothing. And I went to the city and I said, look, can I get a sand fence? Trey Hatt said, yeah. So we put a sand fence there, and we literally planted, I think, about 1,000 COs. And y'all, in 1 year, I got a picture from 1 year to the next year. That dune built up all the way to the walkover in 1 year. So these are the things I promote. So what are we doing now? Well, right now in Jack's Beach, all you guys that live in Jack's Beach, the pipe is kind of, I put it up in the dune because I didn't want to haul it back to the city yard and come back. So what I'm waiting for is those little areas to kind of settle. Okay, we're still in what I think a northeaster season. So in February, we're going to start putting that pipe back up. That's not going to solve that problem. But what it will do is keep people off. And all I do is herd them to the accesses. It's kind of funny. It's like herding cattle. If you just like put it there and they walk, which is great. I will say this: our culture, the people of the beaches, and the city governments, we get it. It is so cool to see that. People get it. They understand it. Now, do we need the dunes? So I'm going to do, I'm going to support my lovely animals, okay? And I got our permit, Jen, just raise your hand. It's there. Jen's here, so I'm under a lot of pressure to say the right things, okay? The dunes support all kind of marine life. Not only the turtles, which I'll talk about, but marine birds, gophers are protected. I'll tell you a great little story on a gopher turtle. But this is what, our turtles, man, they come up all the way to the high dune mark. Okay, they'll come up in there, they will meander. Yes, they are tearing up sea oats, but I will tell you, and I'm going to tell them the story. Kevin calls me one time, and he says, hey, take a couple of kids out and dig up this sea oat. Now, at the time, it was like right out here, and it was a mature sea oat. And I said, okay. And I hung the phone up with him, and it took me about 20 minutes, and I picked it back up. I go, I want a permit from Trey Hatch. And he kind of giggled like that, and I said, no. I ain't touching a sea oat until you give me a letter from Trey Hatch. So I got a letter. Here's the cool part. Took about 10 kids with me. We, just like you would do archaeology, we dug, we moved sand. All of a sudden, y'all, those roots are about 18 to 20 feet long. And it took us about 4 hours to pull up one mature sea oat. I called, because he says, Kevin's like, hey, I got a great idea. Let's get those so we don't bury them and y'all replant them. And I called him back and I said, we ain't doing that. I said, that's just not going to happen. But that's how this holds. You look at that, and I've read a lot of research. Nobody's really done it, so I'm going to guess here. There's not a lot of papers out on it. But that dune, I guarantee you, 60% of that dune is vegetated root. And 40% is sand. And so I look at that and I go, okay, what's the key to us being advocates here? If I lived oceanfront, I'd plant 500 sea oats a year in that dune right behind my house. I would do that. I would plant beach morning glory. I would plant sunflower. I would plant railroad vine. I would spend $200 to buy those plants. Call me. We'll put them in for you. And I've told people this, and we've done this all. We've done it from Atlantic Beach all the way to Ponte Vedra. We've done this for people. I go, here, buy them, and we'll come put them in. Volano. I've done 10 homes in Volano. Those guys are desperate down there. They are so desperate, it's not even crazy. But to Kevin's presentation, it would do us no good to start planting right now because their sand's just going to cover it up. So what are we going to do? We're going to put our pipes up. We're going to put our yellow rope up. We're going to put signs up. I'm going to get 3 feet from this. This is called an escarpment, by the way. And we're going to try to keep people off of this until the project comes in. Now, he mentioned turtle season. It's a nightmare. Okay? Because what usually happens, to let y'all know, is the project manager is on a direct line with one of our guys. Every morning we get up, he can't start until we survey that area. So what they usually do is, it's pretty good. They get a calendar, and they'll do 2 or 3 blocks. So hypothetically, let's say they're going from Beach Boulevard to 3rd Avenue South. So the first thing we do that morning is get up and survey. We survey that area. We're done with it before the sun comes up. And we call him back and go, okay, everything's clear. So that's how we're protecting those turtles. Okay? Now, with that said, if anybody remembers the last dredge, they had a kind of base camp set up at 16th. Well, turtles were crawling in there laying nests. It was crazy. I know, me personally, I moved 2 of those, and I know there was more. And yes, we are permitted on our permit. Once Jen calls FWC, they will say, yes, go ahead. And we are very meticulous, just to let y'all know, we're not going to let anything happen. And we usually move them to an area that has already been dredged and/or is a designated area. Anybody that's in South Jacks Beach last summer, if you went down to the Poles, you saw Turtle City, because Ponte Vedra was relocating 28, 30, 35 nests right there from the Poles into Jacks Beach, because they were under renourishment. So it is time consuming for us, but that's what we do. That's where it's in our DNA to do that. So what can we do? Keep people off the dunes. We're going to put up the barrier. By the way, Atlantic Beach, for those of you that go, where are our poles? I've already talked to all those people. They don't like PVC. And they don't like yellow rope. What they like are the green sign with the Florida State statute on it, which one of our Fletcher students had done as a project. So I'm okay with that. And AB kind of holds its own with that. They do a good job. Besides, you don't get a lot of tourists. No, not like Jacks Beach kids. I had some lady, we're putting the poles in. She comes over the dune with a wagon and 2 kids. Yeah. And I said, hey, ma'am, could you wait a minute? She goes, what? She keeps coming. And I said, there's an access like right there. My wagon can't get through that. And I said, okay. So I got 2 guys and we lifted the wagon up and brought it down. I go, you really can't cross these dunes. She goes, you got to tell them to put a ramp, no steps. And I went, not my department. So now, people that want to help, 2 things you can do. If I lived oceanfront, if I had one of them great homes oceanfront, I would get some kids from my neighborhood, and if you want me to help you, I will. But when we get sargassum that falls up on the beach, and the river seagrasses, y'all can go down and rake it and put it right on the toe of the dune. That is not going to save the sand dune, but I will promise y'all, because we have done this a dozen times, in a period of 2 weeks, you're going to have a little hump there. Everybody asks, how did the Neptune dunes get so big? And I am going to tell you, I see some helpers back there, that we got out there, wheelbarrows and all, and we raked up sargassum, and the whole Neptune beach was about 2 feet of sargassum. I said, spread it out. And I'm telling y'all, in 10 days, that was covered, and there's this little hump of sand right there. Hey, guess how much that costs, people? Nothing. Not a penny. Now, you guys that are into the Christmas trees, everybody listen carefully. You can't put Christmas trees in the dunes. I know we did that in 78 and 80. What that created was a conduit, a space. The trunks created a space. Now, several things came out of that. What happened with that space is it didn't hold sand. That's the first thing. Second thing, it was all of a sudden a nice home for rats and raccoons. So you guys that were oceanfront, if you're throwing Christmas trees in your sand dune, yes, they will collect sand, but that root, that trunk, won't go anywhere. So you're just housing varmints. That's up to you. The third thing is it's illegal to do that, and any yard debris, and I mean palm fronds, old bushes. There's some people that I've had to talk to that are putting old bushes and stuff out there, and I'm like, you can't do this, because our turtles come in, they start digging, and they hit that trunk. And they stop. It's no better than these big holes people are leaving. So, do not leave your Christmas tree trunks in the dunes. I know it's effective. Why not just go buy some plants and plant them? Okay? And you can do that. There's plenty of plant life in our nurseries. Now, these sea oats, I will say this. I used to be able to call up on a Monday, and I could have 2,000 sea oats by Friday. Not a problem. For 15 years I could do that. And in the last 5 years, you have to now pre-order them. Because, y'all, Florida, there are renourishment projects in some 700 miles of Florida. Everybody's getting hit. So the sea oats are not as easy to get anymore than they used to. So what can you use? Railroad vine, beach morning glory, the beach sunstar. There's all kind of pioneer plants, that's what they're called. And if you go to any nursery and say, I want a pioneer plant for the dune ecosystem, they have a few. And they're easy to put in. The one thing we did the last time they planted was they used liquid nitrogen. We called it, remember CO crack? Yeah, we used to get this quart bag and you put like 2 ounces in a gallon of water and you pour that. We would aug the hole, put the plant in, pour it, cover it up, and that would create a gel over the root and help it. It's helping it. Now you got to remember, sea oats are grass. All they are is a nodule. They're a grass. So they're just they work really well in the sand dunes. So that's what I can contribute. So if you see me on the beach, which there's some people in here that have helped, go grab a rake. It doesn't cost anything. If I'm putting PVC pipes up, come on over, man. Get you a post hole digger and we'll do it. Last year we did all Jack's Beach up to 34th Street. Now the problem I got is when this project starts, guess we got to go pull them pipes up. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. All right? Or when we got a big storm, the pipes go up. Have I left anything off about turtles? Sand dunes? No, and I want to really stress, be careful what you throw in the dune. I'm going to stress that. I'm really going to stress that. But I'm also going to stress that I am so proud of any volunteer or our little program. These dunes help, man. And he's exactly right. I'm telling you, I've been asked to come down to Flagler and Volano and Crescent. And they go, what are y'all doing up there? And somebody gives them my number and I come down and they go, that's it? I go, yeah, that's it. And St. Aug Beach, I said, we put these people, they go, oh, we're not doing that. People, oh, okay. All right, live with it then, man. But these are the little things that we do. Don't forget the Great Rake. If I have a chance, if seaweed's in front of my house, get your neighborhood up, man. Y'all get out there, get rakes. It'll take you 30 minutes. And you can put a nice little seaweed rack along the toe. Anybody wants things planted, I'll get a group, we'll come aug it. We'll do it for you. I'll show you exactly what we can do. And I appreciate everybody's support at the beaches.
Thank you, both Kevins. Great presentations. Just, I love the passion of the information. We're running a little bit over time, but we had such a great crowd, so I want to leave a little bit of time, or just some short time, for any questions that you may have for the Kevins.
Kevin, Brian, you mentioned about if we really wanted to plant something that's pioneer.
Yeah.
We don't need anybody's permission to go out and plant stuff?
No, I haven't yet. And, these sparse areas like that, yeah, I mean, do you live on the beach?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm oceanfront, first of all, there's a Supreme Court decision that says you have a right to continental waters to leave your property to go to the beach. So why not enhance? And I'll give you a great example of that. In Dewey's, Atlantic Beach, Ferguson, and that little neighborhood, Dewey's 16th, 17th. We put in 5,000 sea oats there. And Judge Ferguson watered them every day. So he's, yes. Just get you some plants and put them in the dunes.
Second question real quick. Dude, I don't know what you call that fence that's on your.
Yeah, this is a sand fence, which would be.
Would that be of any help in the years?
It's controversial to me. All right, so here's my problem. I'm an environmental advocate for the dunes. Does the sand fence help? Yes.
Do we need anybody's permission?
Yes, you do. You've got to get a DEP permit to do that. Now, we don't like them
Why not?
because our turtles and things come up and hit these. Okay? You can do the same thing with seaweed. You can do the same thing. And you don't have to pay money for that fence. And you can go out on the beach and rake up some seaweed and put it right there and get the same effect. So, I can't tell you what to do. Okay? But, and I am on the board. Does that help? Have other areas use those sand fences? Absolutely. They're going to give you regulations. They're going to give, stipulate. You got to go through Trey Hatch, through the DEP, and get it all. So, I hope I answered your question.
The easiest way is just to recycle.
Yes.
Recycle the sargassum.
The sargassum.
Back line that you see.
And listen, it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Well, you can see that? And I made that picture on purpose. Because she came up here, and that dictated her path. And y'all, this, and I did that on purpose. She ran into one of the PVC pipes. Okay, and it looks like, oh, that dude's a hypocrite. I'm not a hypocrite, but they're not used to this stuff. And it does deter them. And we can get the same thing done by raking seagrass. Not yard debris. We don't want to see palm fronds out there and things like that. Just stuff that's on the beach.
Sir?
Kevin Bodge, I have a question. So two things. One, where did all the sand go? And two, it kind of ruined our surf break to a certain extent. And when will that kind of recover? How does that all work?
Yeah, so the answer to your question, John, is I don't know right now where that sand went. We lost basically on the order of 900,000 cubic yards of sand off the berg. Our profiles to date did not go out into the water. We normally go to 20 feet of water. We won't do that until later this spring. By experience, I'm going to say about half of our sand is offshore in 10 to 15 feet of water. And come April, May, June, we're going to see that migrate on and create a bar system, which is probably going to prove great. I think maybe 30% of our sand we donated to our brethren in St. Johns County. And that's like a black hole because they're like in a really big deficit. And interestingly, about 15-20% ended up in Hannah Park, offshore there, because it's really, really shallow. But break-wise, as you know from surfing for so long, it's really going to just take Mother Nature to reconstitute that bar system, which I don't think you're going to see until the beginning of April.
Thank you.
You should have been here an hour ago. For people who don't surf, that's
Yeah.
Thank you. Question for Mr. Bodge. Kind of I heard some good news and bad news. The good news, one of the good news things that I learned was that before these storms, our dunes were in really good shape and were increasing. And I heard your projections and what you're doing with renourishment, but I didn't hear you talk about how that was being computed with the increase in the sea level.
So to accommodate the increase in sea level rise, we actually increased the elevation of the beach berm and renourishment. So the elevation to which the project is being built now, and in the last 10 years, is on the order of at least a foot, a little more than that, higher than it was built in, say, the early 1980s. And that's just to offset sea level rise impacts.
So you have computed the increase in the sea level in your projections in your renourishment plan?
Yes, yeah, in fact, just had the discussion with the Corps yesterday of basically looking if we want to ratchet it up another little notch on this next go-round.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back?
Yeah, I live in South Jack's Beach, and we're surrounded by Airbnbs, and they're not malicious, but they and their children are constantly on the dunes. I called Public Works, and they came up with 3 3 signs. They stuck them all in front of where I had not complained, but asked for the signs. That can't be that hard. Where do you pick up signs and I mean, it take me an hour to put them in front of these walkovers?
Yeah, did you call Dave McDonald?
Yes.
Yeah, so, you know, I get all my product from Dave McDonald. So if you tell him or call and ask him if he's got more signs and you're going to put them out in that area, I'm sure he will give you some. The ones you see that stay off the dune, the white one?
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of them collapse.
Right, yeah, and they, you know, they're not durable. So I want Jack's Beach to go to the green sign, but I can't sell that yet.
Dave is not always user-friendly.
What?
He is not always user-friendly.
Yeah, so,
maybe I'll copy you.
I tell you what, when you leave here tonight, give me your address. I will bring you some signs.
No, he put a bunch in front of my walkover that's only other ones south.
Yeah, so whoever needs signs, I can,
Okay, thank you.
if you get me, I will drop them off.
So let's just clarify, so any citizen can ask for a sign?
I don't know.
Jack's Beach,
I know that when-
anywhere, or what, I mean, there's got to be a process there.
Yeah, I don't know. My process, and see, that's why I can't be a political, hey, that's why I can't do it, because I just do.
He asked for forgiveness later.
And when I put up the PVC pipe and the yellow rope, I usually get 10 signs. And I put them in. And then when I go get more product, I get 10 more signs. So I don't know if it's but I'll get it for you. I'll do this. I will get those signs.
Okay, it's on video.
That's fine. I'm good.
Question in the back?
Hey, I just want to make a point on planting plants on the dune. Stick with the plants that Kevin has recommended. Often you see out there a lot of the Florida invasive plants, the asparagus fern, the rodelias, and they do take up the space that the other plants will grow. And a point of correction on what Kevin said is, you do not have to be living on the beach to pick up the seaweed.
Yeah.
Anybody can go out there and do it.
We had a whole crew that day, and it was awesome. We got all of Neptune done. 2 feet of seaweed all along the toe of the dune.
Okay, Jack.
Yes, sir.
For Kevin Bodge, on that first slide, when I was talking about the profile, that there was the authorized template on it from the director of the 2-year plan on it. Do you think that next time around, they need to, when they're reauthorizing it, do you think that needs to get raised more, or do you think that that really isn't necessary at this point?
Yeah, so when they do their next feasibility study to extend the life of the project for the 50 years, which, by the way, costs $3 million, and we city has to pay half. They'll re-examine the project from top tip to toe, and that authorized project was developed in the mid-1970s when the project condition was very much different. You all know it's just a seawall with no beach whatsoever. So although it looks very minor and low and inadequate today, it was miraculous in the 1970s. Now the downside of that, without going into too much detail, is when they do this reauthorization study and they look to see how they may change the profile of the project based on performance and sea level rise and everything else, the fact that our beach is so healthy right now means that we don't have as good at economics, and so we're going to see them come up with a project which is much less favorable than the one we have right now. And we've already seen that in Miami and St. Johns County, where the Corps says, yeah, we'll re-up our authorization for 50 years, but we're going to renourish the beach every 12 years instead of every 5. And we're only going to do this part of the project, so we're kind of dragging our feet on that study right now.
Bill?
Kevin, you talk about planting a lot of plants. Do you remove plants? Because some Yahoo planted a lot of cactus on the dune.
Oh, I like the cactus too.
And maybe that's the answer. Maybe we just need to plant a lot of cactus all along the
Any chance I get to put cacti in those dunes, I'll do it.
So
that may have been,
I got plenty for you.
that may have been me.
The cactus love, I mean, the tortoise love the cactus.
Yeah.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we wrap up? I have one more question for Kevin, just real quick, and that is, obviously, since the renourishment's not scheduled until next year, and we will more than likely have a weather event or a couple coming up this year, this season. in those calculations. Has that been considered as well, as far as what they're planning to do as far as renourishment for 2024?
Yeah, I think everyone knows that it's kind of a roll of the dice because we're looking at a schedule that's a year out, and we're going to be exposed to another year of potential hurricane impact. While the dunes are not in a precarious position, you know, it's not ideal. So the bottom line is there was not a lot else we could do to do that acceleration. It's just going to be a little bit of a wing and a prayer. And what I'm hoping for is, like I mentioned to Dr. Ronfront, is we'll see a lot of sand move back into the profile in the spring and the summer, which will not necessarily restore the dune, but at least give us a better beach buffer for storm waves before they hit the dune.
Great. One last question? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, to rake, this sounds so stupid, but I gave away my rakes when I moved to the beach, but do I want to buy one of those big, long agriculture rakes with the stiff prongs, or do I want a leaf rake? What do I want?
We were using yard rakes.
Just like leaf
Yeah,
rakes?
and you know, if you don't have a wheelbarrow, we had a sheet, and we threw the seaweed on the sheet, and we pulled it up to the beach.
But that seaweed is awfully heavy. I mean, for a leaf rake.
It's not that bad. It really isn't that bad.
Okay.
No. But
Okay.
if you get a little group in your neighborhood, it's amazing what you can do in about an hour.
They're called 15-year-olds and younger. Keep them out of trouble during the summer. They can do that.
And I will
right?
say this, you know, before you, it's not going to solve the problem, but it's not going to hurt.
Well,
It's going to give us, that is called a substrata. And what it does is create a substrata for sand to collect on.
And I can tell you, Atlantic Beach used to hire a service to rake the sargassum off the beach and take it away because residents were complaining about the smell. We finally got that taken care of and said, no, it's natural, it needs to stay there, it's for a purpose. So I'm guessing Neptune Beach and Jags Beach probably have the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, but it doesn't cost a penny.
But that's just like the recycling. So what are the two takeaways here from tonight? Stay off the dunes and plant seeds. So there's seeds for you, and seeds for you, and seeds for you, right? When they're ready to be planted.
Yeah.
All right, so we will be sending out announcements when we're looking for volunteers, correct? To plant sea oats and whatever other plants you want to plant in your dune area. Dune daisies are great too, and they're pretty because they have yellow flowers on them. But thank you all very much for coming tonight. This was a great crowd, very enjoyable. Let your neighbors know of our video. This has been videos. It's on YouTube tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you on February 1st.